Okay. Okay, so here we're going to go ahead and present information that we have here on interviewing and the information we're going to use for our interview project at the end of the week. And then so I'll go ahead and present that information on interviewing that you'll need for that exercise, for that project. And then I'll also bring in information about how you're going to interview a professional. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll go ahead and we'll take some questions toward the end. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do during this time. So as we look at interviewing, and it's part of the information, it's part of Chapter 8 in the OER textbook. And so this information point is there, but I want to go ahead and bring it up and bring it forth to go ahead and give you that information for the interview project. Okay, so let's go through this. So here it just starts off with how to prepare for your interview, and so we're going to do this as well because we have our interview that we're going to be doing. And it should be, as you do your interview, it should be tied into, we did the cover letter resume, that potential job that you want. So you go ahead and you structure the interview for that. So you want to make sure that you've already read the job description, you've done the research, and you practice answering questions before you record the YouTube video. So do some practice runs before you go ahead and do the final video answering the questions. Okay? Move forward. So of course, we're dressing appropriately. It is required that you do dress professional. And so of course, I know wardrobe might be limited because we're mainly at home. But if you just have, you know, a solid like dress shirt and some dress pants, that's all you'll be seeing. For the women, dress shirt, dress pants as well, or dress shirt, dress skirt. The jacket for gentlemen and the women is not required, but if you want to, you can go ahead and put a jacket on. Usually, and for the men, I was going to say a tie too is optional. You can go ahead and put that on as well. And usually for attire, for when you dress professional, when you're interviewing, they prefer solid, darker colors. So you do like black and grays, like when you have like black pants and a black jacket, right? Or a gray pants and a gray jacket. They prefer solid, dark colors. Then your dress shirt can be other colors, but still they prefer, you know, avoid bright colors, avoid something that has a lot of print or patterns on it, and make like a usually a solid color choice. You know, if it's white, it's fine. A dark red is fine. It doesn't have to be a certain color, but just have it like a solid color. And usually the rule of thumb is to usually wear something darker. Okay, you don't dress, and I don't think we'll have that, but you don't dress as if you're going to, you know, out with friends, or that's different. Okay. Okay, so I mean, you're going to be prepared. This is for when you actually do go, if you are doing an interview face to face. You bring your resume, your cover letter. You're avoiding, well, for the video, you do want to avoid distractions, avoid, you know, not to chew gum. That should not be done in any presentation. So you want to keep that in mind. You're going to build confidence, and you're going to be confident, and you're going to make a, you know, strong first impression. And as they say, there's never a second chance to make a first impression. So, you know, we'll be making the impressions in the video, right? So we're going to go ahead, and I'll talk about that right now. You have your script where you have your questions. So you type out your question, type out your response. That's the first part. And the second part is actually doing the YouTube video. You're answering some of those questions, and then you're going to go ahead, upload it to the discussion board, and then you're going to go ahead and respond to peers. So there's those two sections to it. Okay, let me move forward. Here are just different types of interviews. They have screening interviews where they kind of weed out certain applicants, and they're usually brief. We have more phone and web conference interviews, and we're going to see more web conference interviews now. Like I've had meetings and interviews through Zoom, and so it's something, you know, the way things are going now, we're going to be seeing more of that. We have one-on-one interviews, and so the majority are done this way, face-to-face, one-on-one, you, the interviewee, and the interviewer. Okay. Then we have panel interviews where you have about five coworkers meet at the same time with a single interviewee. Okay. And no problem if we have others that are joining, go ahead. I'm just presenting information about the chapter about interviewing first, and then I'll go ahead and take questions towards the end. And of course, if you do have a question while I present the information, no problem, go ahead. You would just click on the little icon with the hand, and then you'll go ahead and ask your question as well. In case you're joining us, because I see maybe some possible students joining. Okay. More types of interviews, serial interviews. So a combination of one-on-one meetings with a group of interviewers. And so they're conducted in a series of meetings throughout the day. So sometimes you'll do more than one interview. There's lunch interviews. And it's done maybe if you're going to go ahead and have a second interview. And now we're seeing more of group interviews. So you have one or two interviewers, and they go ahead and they interview like an assembled group, many interviewees. And so we do see that now a little bit more. So different types of interviews there. Here, so we go into the information. This is what you want to keep in mind as you structure your interview. So when you do your video, how are you going to be putting the questions? Like, how are you going to go ahead and answer them, right? So are you going to start with a pyramid structure? You're going to start with the detailed, often closed-ended question, and then you go to the open-ended questions, right? And so you want to keep in mind when you're doing the interview or you're being interviewed, they use different structures, and this is one type of structure. So they go ahead and they ask those closed-ended questions first, and then they go ahead and they go into the open-ended questions. Okay. The funnel structures are reversed. They begin with open-ended questions. So when you hear open-ended questions, that means that it's questions that avoid yes and no answers. You want to expand, elaborate a little bit more, you want to say a little bit more. Maybe provide an example. And then the closed-ended questions are, the yes-no questions. Are you willing to travel? Yes, no. And open-ended are, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Those are all open-ended because you expand and you elaborate a little bit more. So in this structure, you start with the open-ended and then you go into the closed-ended questions. Okay. Then the diamond structure is so it starts with closed-ended and then it goes to open-ended questions, goes to open-ended questions, and then it goes to closed-ended questions. So you kind of follow here the image, and it starts with closed, like the tip here is closed, so closed-ended, and then it goes to open-ended, where you kind of expand a little bit more, and then it goes to, you end with closed-ended questions. So it's just a way to, when you're interviewing someone else, a way to structure your interview. Like, how do you want to ask the questions? What kind of questions do you want to ask? Which kind of questions do you want to ask first? So that's what that information is telling us. Okay. Here it just talks about the difference between structured and unstructured interviews. And so a structured interview means that it's more planned and you have like a strict roadmap. You know exactly what you're going to go ahead and do in your interview. You know exactly what you're going to go ahead and ask. Usually they tend to have more close-ended questions, and so more of those yes-no questions. Whereas unstructured, it's more conversational, and so it's more informal. And so you're having more of a conversation. If I was the interviewer with the interviewee, I would have more of a conversation. Okay. Then here it just talks about, it compares the structured and unstructured interviews. The unstructured interviews provide more flexibility. They give the interviewee, they are able to provide more insight, which means they're able to provide more information, more examples. They're more spontaneous. And so it's different from the structured interviews where there's more precision, meaning maybe more control, more organization structure, less, spontaneity. And so the evaluation is, very on point, very, very to the point. So here is just comparing the structured and unstructured. The most common is unstructured interviews. Sometimes some interviewers, if you want more organization, preparation, they go with a structured interview. So we just keep that in mind for when you interview. We're going to practice, answering questions now in our video. But when you have other interviews or you've already interviewed before, just different information that we see with interviews. Okay. So in your interview, you're going to be doing this structure, and I just wanted to go ahead and present it. When you interview, you usually have an opening phase, you have a questioning phase, and you have a closing phase. An opening phase is where you go ahead and you greet each other, you welcome each other. Like if you were going into the room and the interviewer was there, you would go ahead and greet each other, welcome each other, provide an orientation, meaning, you know, what is the interview for? How long is the interview going to be? So you would do that opening phase. Then you go into the questioning phase where you start asking the questions, right? And you have your, I've said, you know, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? How do you resolve conflict? There's different questions. You ask those questions and then you answer them. In the closing phase, what you do is you go ahead once again, you know, thank each other, you and the interviewer, you know, thank each other for your time. And then you go ahead and you say when the person is going to be contacted, you know, thank you for your time, thank you for interviewing me. You kind of close out with greetings, and then you kind of also say what's going to come up in the future. When will you be contacted? So now it's not that it's strange, but you're doing the video by yourself, right? There's no one else there to interview you, and right now we'll go into that. So in the way that you'll do it is you'll go ahead and when you start your interview, you'll go ahead and, you know, hello, my name is Laura Alvarado. I'm here to go ahead and interview for the position of sales manager. So the position that you applied for the cover letter resume. So yeah, I'm here to go ahead and apply for that position. And we're going to go ahead and start answering some questions. And then you go into the questions. So the first question is, tell me about yourself, which that question, when they ask you, it should be related to things that you've done in the workplace or things that will enhance what you can do in the workplace. So you can maybe projects that you've taken on, your education is always welcomed, your experience, your skills, things like that. Extracurricular that maybe include volunteering or being part of different things, but you don't bring in hobbies or you don't bring in what you do for fun when they say, tell me about yourself. So you want to like highlight briefly your main attributes. So anyways, then you go ahead and you answer those questions, right? And in the closing phase, you would the first question is, tell me about yourself, and then you would answer it, right? So we're in the questioning phase. And then when you close out, after you answer the questions, when you close out, you know, thank you for your time and you have a good day. So you just close out like that as you do the recording. Now, if we were in class, it'd be different. You would do the interview with someone, you know, in 2 persons, a dyad, and you would do it in front of the class, and it'd be a little different. But now it's still the same thing. You're still doing the same thing. It's just that it's you yourself practicing, preparing for an interview, practicing your responses, and then presenting that through video. And then you still have an audience as if you were in class, because we're going to be responding to 3 peers on their interview. So you're still going to have that audience. It's just presented differently when you're online. But okay, so that's what you'll go ahead and you'll be doing. So the YouTube video or the interview YouTube video, some things that you want to keep in mind is you have to dress professional. It's a requirement. Okay, it's a requirement. I know maybe we're limited on, as we can't go out, or we're limited to our outings, but you know, find the best attire that you can. You want to make sure that you're responding to 3 peers, because they need an audience to see their videos, and they also need feedback from you. And so make sure you do that. I've talked already about background and noise when recording. I know everyone's home, family, siblings, parents, different people. But even if you're in your room, just find the wall, like a solid background. Or if you're in the kitchen table, that's fine. So for the video, you can stand or you can sit. And then also, like I said before, the questions, you can, if you don't have, say your parents go out to work, I don't know, and you're there by yourself, you don't have someone to ask you the questions, like they would say, you know, tell me about yourself. Then you just go ahead and say, this is my first question, tell me about yourself, and then you go ahead and respond to it. If someone else asks you the questions, of course, they'll be out of the video, right? We'll just hear their voice. So it just depends who you have at home with. And either way that you do it, it's okay. Then I also want to say the interview of a professional is due Friday, and so when you're interviewing them, had already gone through who you're considering, and if you didn't submit that, you want to let me know who you're considering to interview, and I put comments there. But so what you're doing is that you're asking them 5 open-ended questions. So 5 of these questions where they could expand, elaborate a little bit more. And you can go ahead and ask them those 5 questions about any topic that we've seen in the class. Well, we've talked about communication in the workplace, culture, listening, interpersonal communication, nonverbal communication, verbal communication, conflict, different things that are important in the workplace, right? Organization, structure of a workplace. You can ask them those kind of questions, and also advice that you want to ask maybe about work. You know, how can you be successful in the workplace? You know, what do you recommend? And so things like that, because you want to use the information that they give you for your future career or what you plan on doing. So you ask those 5 open-ended questions, and then you go ahead and you submit that. Let's call it a script, which means that you go ahead and you type out the question, then you type out their response, and then at the very top you'll put your name and then their contact information. And you'll go ahead and you submit that on Friday. So those are the major assignments. The interview of a professional is due Friday, and then the 2 parts to the interview project are due on Sunday. And so they're at the end of the week to work on them during the week and kind of break it up, you know, into little pieces. And if you have questions, to go ahead and let me know. Okay. Before I go ahead and ask the questions, let me share really quick. Okay. So let me share really quick on use the information in the textbook. You can always ask me questions, but the textbook on chapter 8 has the information about interviews and has this PowerPoint too. But I'll make this PowerPoint available on Blackboard as well. And so then let me go here. Let's see. Okay. Oh, okay. So let me go there. So then here you can see, and those that are present in the lecture, let me know if you can see this. So this is chapter 8 on the textbook here. When you open up the OER, so it's Open Educational Resources, then you go to the bottom here where it talks about chapter 8, interviews. And then it has, you know, you click on that link, it has information about interviewing, a video about interviewing, the types of questions that you can go ahead and ask. You know, there's a list that you can use, illegal questions and how to handle them, different techniques, and the PowerPoint down here. Illegal questions are like you can't, when you interview, you can't ask the interviewee, you know, things about their status, like their marriage status, if they're single, married, anything about age, anything about usually gender, age, sexual orientation. You can't ask any of those questions because then you can't get grounds or basis for discrimination because you cannot hire someone based on their age, for example. So then those are questions that you don't ask. When I click here, it opens up, you know, different information that you want to go ahead and look at too. It gives you ideas of questions to ask, how to prepare, different things that we saw in the PowerPoint that I just presented, but it's there. Video to go ahead and look at that. Okay. So the links that you can do the PDF or you can do the website. Let's look at some of this. So if you're thinking about what questions to ask, here are some examples. So you can go through this. Objectives. Then it goes into the different types of questions. So remember, we're doing open-ended questions where you're able to expand, elaborate a little bit more. And then it goes into that. Okay. So when that happens, when it can't open it, it usually is you want to copy and paste the link. So sometimes when you click on the link on Blackboard, it can be weird. It doesn't present it, but if you copy the link, then you go ahead and you put it on the tab, then it'll go ahead and open it as well. Okay, so what it did, this one downloaded a PowerPoint, so you can go ahead and open up that PowerPoint to get more information. Okay. Other questions, different interviewing techniques, And so it's those standard interviewing questions, like I said, that you see, tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? How would you handle conflict in the workplace? And different like that. How do you work effectively in groups, a group setting? Different questions like that that you go ahead and you are going to be doing. And then for the script, you do 5 open-ended questions and then 5 closed-ended questions. Okay. But okay. And I've already gone over this, but in the video when I went over what you'll be doing. So that's the work for this week. So here's where you go ahead and here's a template you're following starting from here for the interview professional. Then you go ahead and you submit it here on Friday, right? And so you submit your Word document. Then for the interview project, you have to click on the folder to open it up on the bottom. Then here on the first part is where you're interviewing or you're putting your script. And so this you're putting your name, date, you're typing out your question, you're typing out your response. And you're doing 5 open-ended questions and then 5 closed-ended questions. And it has to be in a Microsoft Word document using a black color. And then you go ahead and you submit the script here, right? Click on there and then you submit it. That's the first part. Here's an example. And I had put, just don't put your questions in red. This was just done so you can see the question. Okay. So here are some of my ideas for questions as well. Then in the second part, this is where you're putting your YouTube video. And then you're going to go ahead, so that step 3 is a YouTube video, and then step 4 is responding to peers. So there's 4 steps. So in the first 2 steps, the first step is that what job are you interviewing for? And so you want to tie it into your career, anything potentially, teacher's aide, teacher's assistant, different things like that. And then you're going to go ahead, step 2, you do the script. You go ahead and you do your 10 questions, 5 open-ended and 5 closed-ended. Then when we come, there's the example. Then when we come down here, step 3 is doing the YouTube video, and then step 4 is giving that feedback to your peers. And so in the video, I know you're only answering 3 open-ended questions, and only that's done, so you're not answering all questions, just 3. That's done because then the video can be very long. And so you're going to start with your opening, hello, my name is Laura Alvarado, and I'm interviewing for the position of teacher assistant. Let's go ahead and get started. The first question is, tell me about yourself. And then you go and you answer the question. And then what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, are the other open-ended questions that I select. So you do 3. And then you go to your closing. Well, thank you for your time and have a good day. And then you end it. And so you're doing that. And of course, you're dressed professional. That's a requirement. And it's there as well. And it's here, you will dress professionally for the video. So you want to make sure that you read the instructions here. Sometimes they're kind of hard to miss because I like to be very thorough, and there's a lot, there's information there to understand what you have to do, but you want to go ahead and read it. But okay, let me go back over here. Let me take away, go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So then that was just little information about the interview. And it comes from chapter 8, which we've seen, but that way you can keep that information in mind as you do your interview project. Then I talked a little bit about the interview with the professional. I talked about what you'll be doing in your interview project and how you use the information from the chapter, how you'll do your video, that you'll dress professional. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me through email, course messages, or of course collaborate. Apart from our live session, I'm always there from 9 to 11 a.m. on during the week, Monday to Friday. So if you have any questions, let me know. Also, so then here's a PowerPoint that I downloaded from that link in the chapter. So I mean, look at that, because it's just that the chapters are meant to help with the assignments, right? But as instructors, we can't force students to read, even though I do the summaries, right? But students sometimes don't go through everything. And you want to go through the information so it can help you. It has that video about interviewing, and so that way you're also prepared for the interview. And if you have questions, let me know. But okay, so let's go ahead and I'll stop there because as instructors go on, and we feel that all of our information is important, and so we go on and on. But let's go ahead and take if anyone has any questions about those that are here that about interview of a professional, or if you have a question about the interview project. And the way you ask your question is you make sure you unmute yourself in the microphone down there, and you don't have to show video as long as we can hear you. And you can just ask your question, or you can go ahead and click on the icon with the hand up. And then if you have questions, you can click on that too as well. And then you can go ahead and ask your questions. Okay. So let's see, let me close this out. We have our participants.
So, for the interview, the video that we're going to do, is it based off of the cover letter and resume that we submitted, or are they two completely different things?
No, it's preferable. It's based off of the cover letter and resume that you submitted. Yes, you should, because that job, as you selected it, should be tied into your career in some way. So yes, structure it. You can do it on that, on that job.
Okay. Is there a time limit on the video?
There isn't a time limit on the video. I know before I do specify, but this time I don't want you to feel pressured or rushed. But since it's only 3 questions that you're answering, I mean, we'll see maybe like an average of 5 minutes or so, 5 to 7, maybe a little bit more, and that's fine.
Okay. And then so we do say all 10 videos that we wrote in the script.
The 10 questions.
Yeah, because you know how you said that's 5 open-ended and 5 closed questions.
Yeah.
So in the video, are we gonna say all 10 of them, or only some of them?
Good question. Only some of them. So in the video, you're only doing 3 of the open-ended questions, because I want students to practice those responses more. Because when you have the closed-ended, which are just yes, no, well, I mean, those are questions that are easier to answer, and I want more practice with the open-ended. And so to answer the question before I explain, you just do 3 open-ended questions. So from your script, you only get 3 open-ended, and then you go ahead and you answer those in the video. So any of those open-ended that you want to go ahead and do. With the open-ended, when you do the video, it's a trick, because the answers can't be too short or too long. So what you do is you give just enough. So how you would do it. So for example, if they were asking me, tell me about yourself, you go ahead and you talk about, like I said before, you talk about your education, maybe skills that you want to highlight, what you've done in the community, any kind of volunteer work, and then you go ahead and you move on to the next question. So if I was answering, just to give you an example, when they say, tell me about yourself. So I'm in El Paso. Let's see, let me go ahead and think about this question. Okay. So if I was to go ahead and answer when they say, tell me about yourself. Okay. So I'm a graduate of the University of Texas at El Paso. I received a master's in communication. I have been teaching since 2013. I have been with EPCC since then, and it's something that I love to do. Some skills and qualifications that I have for this position are, I'm very, I love group collaboration. I like assisting and helping others, especially my students. I like to put myself out there and always be available when they need help. So those are some skills and attributes about me that will help me in this job. And then you go ahead and so you say just enough where you tell me about yourself, talk about your education, talk about certain skills and attributes, and maybe some volunteer work I would throw in there. And I volunteered in different places. For example, one summer I volunteered in the Child Crisis Center. You did, and so you would maybe just say like those 3 points, and that's just enough. And so you always want to tie into that kind of experience. But sorry, Angelica, I go on. I'm just giving, so you answer 3 open-ended questions, but I'm kind of giving an example of how you answer them. So that way you know when you do your video. But what other questions do you?
I think that's it.
Okay. And so let's see. And for other questions, when they say, like, if you were to do one, how do you deal or how do you manage conflict in the workplace? That's also another common one. So you don't just say, oh yes, I manage it. I manage it well. You have to give a little bit more explanation, but not too much. So then what you would do is, I manage conflict effectively in the workplace. So let me give an example. One year we were working in groups, and in this group we had to go ahead and do a group project. And we were having conflict between our group members. Some were not in agreement to what we were doing. So I had to step in and kind of oversee. I had to ask both group members, what was happening, what was their perspective, how can we resolve this? And so by asking them their perspective and being able to bring it up, in the forefront and bring it up to the open, we talked about what was happening. We were able to go ahead and resolve that conflict. So in that way, I'm very proactive. I go ahead and I take charge when there's conflict, and I don't see conflict as a problem. It's something that can be managed, and that's unavoidable in the workplace. So see how if they ask you something, you don't just say, oh yes or no, you elaborate a little bit more. And then that response is good enough because you don't want to go too long either. But okay. So no questions or other questions, Angelica? You say you were good?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, not a problem. I know I think we have Anaí. I don't know, Anaí, if you have any questions that you want to ask about the interview or professional or about the interview project. I don't know if, let's see. Okay. Well, so Anaí, there's different options. So you can go ahead and you can just ask the question. Just make sure you unmute yourself, the microphone down here in the panel, like where you see the little camera and the microphone. You can go ahead and ask a question that way. Or if you feel more comfortable on the chat on the side, you can go ahead and type something there. If you don't, if you don't feel comfortable asking the question, and of course you don't have to show video, but you can go ahead and type the question here on the side on the little, you will pull out the panel where it has the collaborate panel, like those little arrows on the side on my right hand side on the bottom. And then you will pull it out and there's like a little bubble there. So that's a chat option. And you can go ahead and put your question there if you want to just type it out. Okay. So I'll go ahead and wait a few seconds if you have some questions, Anaí. If not, then you're fine. Ah, okay.
Miss, I got a new question. So
Sure. Go ahead.
So I remembered that for my cover letter and resume, I had submitted a different job than for my ideal job thing. So is that okay though? Because for the other one, I had put the thing that after I graduate from high school, I would be qualified for, so like a realistic job application. But for the ideal job, I put the job I want in the long run. That is okay though, right?
Yes, that's okay. Yes, for the ideal job. Yeah, I want you to keep in mind what you want to do later. And I asked for that assignment because last week and this week when we talk about resume, cover letters, and now interviews, I want you to use this information for when you do apply for, if you want a immediate job or a job right away. But also I want you to keep that information in mind for when you do your career, because it's very important that you be prepared when you want to apply for a job. It's competitive and the world is changing now where we have more, and we're using technology more in different ways. And so you want to go ahead and just be prepared for that. But no, the way that you did it is fine.
Alrighty then, thank you.
Yes, I just tend to, students ask me something and then I go on for like 5-10 minutes. But I try to just answer the question. Yeah, yes, no, or what you're asking. Okay.
Okay, it's very helpful.
No problem, Angelica. Okay, ladies. So if there's no other questions, Anaí, let me know through chat that there's no questions on her end, and also Angelica, if you have other questions, you can always reach me through email, of course, messages, and or on Collaborate. I'm there on Collaborate. So I know students don't want to try things, but Collaborate is like this, except that I won't do the PowerPoint lecture. I won't give all the information. But in Collaborate, you just sign in and you talk to me this way. You would just unclick your microphone, and you don't have to unclick your camera, and then you would just ask me questions that you have. It's a way for you to talk to me and see me if you want, but you can talk to me and ask me questions if you're stuck somewhere. And students, it's like office hours in the actual office that when we were on campus, they don't go unless there's a major problem or issue. But you want to approach and ask the instructor questions, even if you don't have a major issue, like if you're stuck somewhere. But okay, ladies. If there's no other questions, we're gonna go ahead and end. And the way that you leave is on the very top. Let's see if I put you right here where there's the three little arrows. You would go there, and then there's an option to leave session, and then you'll go ahead and you'll leave the session that way. But we'll start ending. No other questions. We're good, Angelica.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, ladies, Anaí and Angelica, have a good day. Thank you for joining and asking questions and participating. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. You have a good day. I'll say bye and we'll start ending now. Thanks, ladies.